What's going on, champs and champets? It's FireMonkey here, and if you're someone who listens and pays attention to the Fortnite lore, you might want to hear out this video. Now, at the same time, we're not going to be talking about too much lore-specific things for Battle Royale because of the fact that, I'm going to be honest here, I feel the Battle Royale lore has changed so many times over the years and it's been rewritten a million times, to the point where I don't really even know what lore people are talking about. Are they talking about, like, the 7 lore? Are they talking about the IO lore, or something in between? I don't know. It has changed so many times, but there's been a lot of people saying that this upcoming Simpsons event on November 1st is supposed to be related to the Spirit Realm Siege, which I guess has been hinted at by the in-game story quest lines that you can do already, or maybe it's related to some things that insiders have said. I don't personally have an inside source or anything like that, so I don't know any of that information, but it has been a pretty interesting thing to see people start talking about and hyping up. That was until the other day when Fortnite updated the in-game newsfeed to actually start hyping up the Simpsons event that is going to be happening November 1st at 11 in the morning, and they used a very specific wording. So I'm going to read out this event description to you guys, and I want you to tell me in the comments down below, or maybe you can just wait a few seconds after I say it, what this wording was. It says, "Welcome our alien overlords mini event November 1st. Not even Bart's treehouse can contain what awaits. Kick back on the couch, grab a donut, and welcome King and Godos on November 1st at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Don't change the channel, more of The Simpsons is coming soon." Now, if you didn't hear, early on when I actually started reading that, they mentioned it was a mini event. And when we think of mini events as a community, we don't think about, you know, something crazy like a whole story lore event or something like that. We usually think about these smaller things that have happened before. Something like, I want to say my best description of a mini event right now was when we kind of had the whole like samurai battle on the island with Daigo and the one samurai skin that was kind of like, you know, the controlling that island we had back then. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, but it was like one of those events that wasn't really hyped up too much, but still existed and still kind of happened in game. Now, despite this wording of it being a mini event, people noticed there were some oddities in the game. Firstly, there is a actual LTM playlist ID that exists, playlist_LimeRock. That at least exists over on the internal, you know, Epic Games playtesting servers or whatever else. So it does mean at some point during this development of LimeRock, the event we're going into, you know, the Simpsons mini event, that they had a whole entire playlist dedicated to it. Not only that, but there's also been a lot of rumors from insiders talking about how this is actually supposed to be related to something in the storyline and how it's supposed to still be a big event, even though it's being mentioned as a mini event. But let me tell you, when mini event was first mentioned online, everyone started freaking out. Everyone started like throwing stones at all the leakers and everything, but some interesting things happened online afterwards. Firstly, Hypex officially tweeted on Twitter saying this week's event is a full event and is going to actually have a event next month as well, you know, at the end of the Simpsons mini season, which I do believe is supposed to be codenamed Sky Mango, which is supposed to be even bigger than this event right here. And then he says it's from a trusted source or insider that he actually has at Epic Games, so it does make sense that, you know, he would be able to say this information, especially when, you know, leakers have been wrong here and there before, but a lot of leakers who have inside sources and have gotten things right before seem to be very adamant that this event is bigger than what people are thinking, despite the wording of a mini event. And then Tim Sweeney himself, the glorious CEO of Epic Games, had liked a comment of someone stating, "Does this mean the mini event is actually a big event?" And then later on, he actually ended up putting a no context image over on his Twitter timeline of someone knocking down, you know, or preparing to knock down a very small domino, and how that creates a domino effect of even bigger dominoes being knocked down all the way up to a domino that, you know, is like the size of an actual person. So with all of this stuff, I feel like this wording of a mini event means that nowadays, with how Epic Games has actually evolved, if this event does end up being something that is very big and, you know, is related to the Fortnite storyline and is somehow related to the Simpsons and all that type of stuff, maybe it's like a part 1 to the main event, right? You know, like my theory right now, what I've actually had kind of talked about with some friends, is maybe, and keep in mind this is a theory, this is not a leak whatsoever, but maybe they do some interesting situation where it's like, we're starting off with the story event, the Storm Realm Siege, and then something goes wrong and we get a cliffhanger in the event, and then, you know, maybe they have some goofy gag or something, you know, like maybe Homer decides to change the channel or something, you know, we get a voice on him saying boring or whatever, you know, hearing someone drinking something along those lines, you know, something that is kind of like fourth wall breaking in a way, considering the fact that we already had Bart Simpson graffitiing all over the Fortnite Fortnite logo to make it Fortnite and doing all that type of stuff, you know, just to kind of have a little bit more of that unique quirkiness, but to also give us a cliffhanger for the people who actually pay attention to the Fortnite lore and storyline in a way where they want to show up after the end of the Simpsons event. They want to see the second part of the big storyline event and how it actually continues going into everything. And if it's not that, you know, if it's something completely different, you know, I'm fine being wrong about it, but the other thing I'm thinking about here is the fact that they're labeling this as a mini event. If it does end up being a little bit bigger than anyone actually suspects, it makes me wonder, what do they consider a big event at that point? I know they're working on a whole like Disney mode, the Warner Brother mode, all that type of stuff, and they're working on a lot of different modes internally behind the scenes and everything in between. They have a pretty consistent storyline going on from the little bit I followed around, you know, Pandora's box and all that has been related to everything that's kind of evolved over time. So what if a big event ends up being something on the size, and I know this is going to sound a little crazy to say it this way, what if it's on the size of something like a movie, right? You know, I'm not saying that they would go ahead and film a movie. There isn't a Fortnite movie being worked on as far as I'm aware, but what if they consider what they're doing now with events to kind of just be little films in a way, right? And a big event to them isn't something that, you know, is related just to the storyline or the lore or whatever else, but instead it's actually related to a lot more. But honestly, time will tell if this event ends up actually being as big as some of the leakers on social media are stating it out to be, and, you know, based on all the hype and little vagueness from Tim Sweeney himself, or if it is truly just a mini event and it isn't something to be super hyped for. Personally, my rule of thumb whenever it comes to any leak, even the ones I post on my own account or other people post on my account, is look, I know everyone wants to have like this super cool event. They want to have this super amazing cinematic or whatever else. If that happens, cool. However, I'm always going to have my expectations lowered unless something's been officially teased by Epic Games, so that I don't end up going to the event with high hopes of, you know, getting answers to all my burning questions, seeing the next phase of the storyline or whatever else, only to be lied to, only to, you know, be misdirected or something, right? So in my opinion, be hyped for the event if you want to be, right? I'm not saying don't hype up this event. If you're excited for it, be excited for it. But at the same time, take the things leakers say as a grain of salt. It does appear, you know, like this information is coming from credible leakers and credible insiders and all that type of stuff, so I wouldn't be surprised if this is a pretty big event. But at the same time, don't go into it expecting everything you've ever wanted and more. You know, temper your expectations a little bit, and then you can never be disappointed. Until next time, however, hope you champs and champions enjoyed today's YouTube video. Let me know in the comments down below, what do you think about this upcoming Fortnite event? Do you think it's actually going to be a pretty big one, or do you think it's just going to be a smaller one because it's related to the Simpsons, and then the end of Simpsons event that leads us into Chapter 7 will be like the big event or something, you know, the main festivity of everything going on here. Until next time, however, like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't like it, and I will catch you guys tomorrow with another upload. So until then, peace out.